It's another FA Cup title then for Manchester City, up to 8, still a bit away from Arsenal and Manchester United, but after two defeats in a row, Nathan.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Sweet one obviously against Palace and United.
Don't know what you're talking about there, Thomas. They've just won it. That's all you need to focus on.
It didn't have to be great to win it today.
Yeah, that's the way this thing goes now.
By the way, it's raining, and I don't know if you know, I don't work in the rain.
Well, they're good. Off you go. What a bonus. I was hoping you'd melt like the Wicked Witch.
Small print in my contract, so if you see me disappear, it's all right.
Okay. Craig alluded to it yesterday. Could this be Pep Guardiola's swan song?
Before this last few days, I thought he was going to be, but in recent press conferences, he's talking about how he's going to be back next year.
He said it was not his last time at Wembley for City.
Yeah, but I think he said something in the press today as well, where he's saying that he will be back next season. And for something to be that direct and that strong is very unlike Guardiola. I think he likes to sort of keep people guessing overall. So for him to say that, it's almost like we have to call him a liar for saying it. But through the last few years, I don't think we've had the chance to do that. So I think he's staying. He seems like he wants to go again. He's got one more year left on his deal.
I was going to ask that.
He's got one more year left on his deal, so this never-ending story, keeps on going.
So Pep Guardiola to stay. Meanwhile, from a Chelsea perspective, of course, the talk has been over the last 48 hours that they've had productive talks with Xabi Alonso. I don't know what that entails. Iriola is still in the mix. Arne Slot, we'll talk about that a little bit later on with Liverpool and what Mo Salah has come out and said. So in that state, where are we with Chelsea and who's going to be in charge next season?
Bearing in mind Xabi Alonso, as you know, we cover La Liga every week. He took a big hit with that Real Madrid job. Got out just in time, so he wasn't unscathed, but he got out, with a little bit of damage. He can't afford that to happen again. So if it is to be Chelsea for him and not Liverpool, he's got to get the assurances. But that's all the assurances every manager gets. And when you get in there, it changes. And that's the problem. But what we do know is whatever this club are doing isn't working.
No.
Right? And
how easy is it to fix, Craig?
Well, you have to bring in a coach and you have to trust him.
Right.
You can't bring somebody in and then you have half a dozen people with their fingers in the pie trying to make decisions that are affecting the on-field. You have to let the Guardiolas and the Klopps of this world, who have been super successful in England, but they've basically controlled the football club within reason. That has to happen, but I don't think that will happen. And why wouldn't he be a Chelsea player that's looking elsewhere?
Right.
All the talk, Cucurella said this. Enzo Fernandez said he might want to live in Madrid one day. Why not? Why wouldn't? Unless if I was a player at that club and I was at the peak of my career, as some of these players are, some of them a bit younger, and I was looking at them saying, they don't know what they're doing upstairs, and they're just going to keep making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and therefore we won't be challenging. Okay, we're at an FA Cup final today, but we won't be challenging for the Premier League, really. We won't be challenging for the Champions League. Why wouldn't a World Cup winner or a Cole Palmer or a João Pedro say, do you know what? I think I can go somewhere else and better myself. And that's the issue that Chelsea have. So they have to make, I think, a big statement with the appointment of a new manager.
And who will that be?
I think it'll be Iriola.
Right.
I think all this Alonso stuff, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a smokescreen, but it just feels like he's going to be going to Liverpool.
But have you seen what this? Sorry to butt in, but have you seen the reports from Liverpool today about
the data? But see, when I hear the data thing, it feels like that's almost Arne Slot using that as a justification for how well he's doing.
But that's not him saying that. This is the Richard Hugheses and FS, the Fenway Sports Group that own the club are saying the data's telling us. I mean, this is bonkers, isn't it?
But you know how that will be received, though, by the fan base, by people within football. That will be received terribly because they know ultimately they're not happy with what they're seeing on the pitch. And if we want to talk about data, one key bit of data is they've lost 19 games of football this season.
Yep.
Like, how do you say that's fine as long as their XG is going up? The 19 games is too much. Fans were leaving early yesterday against Aston Villa, and as they enter this next season, are they going to be comfortable with Arne Slot as manager? The likelihood is absolutely not.
They're losing faith in the type of football that's being played as well. They were spoiled.
It was interesting what you were saying, Jermaine, during the game. You're like, none of these players want to be playing this system that Chelsea was set up to play. What did you mean by that exactly?
Exactly. So you look at the type of football they were playing. Every single one of them. Cole Palmer. You look at João Pedro. You look at the attacking players especially. They don't want to be sitting deep in their own half, defending like a half-court press. You don't want to do that. Those type of players need to be in the attacking areas, picking up the ball, pressing the centre halves, pressing the fullbacks, winning the ball, turning the ball over in the final third, where their real creativity can really kick in.
Yeah.
That's where the magic happens. Not in your own half. You can't do anything from your own half. That's what the defenders are for. That's what your holding centre midfield players are for. That's what Enzo Fernandez when he's playing in the 6, or Caicedo when he's playing in the 6 or the 8. That's what they're there to do. That's their role. That's their job.
Yeah.
And then they give it to the creative players, the Cole Palmers and all of those other players that should have turned up today but didn't.
For sure, Craig said it. Like what you've said there, Craig has already said that, because he said Cole Palmer doesn't want to have to be doubling up with Malo Gusto for 90 minutes.
Right.
But that ends up being what he's doing. And I think to make it worse from a Chelsea perspective, especially that first half, is Cole Palmer then wins the ball back and he looks forward and he's going to play it to Malo Gusto further up the field. That is the exact opposite of what you want it to be. You want to be able to feed those attackers in those dangerous areas so they can do something. But instead, as was the case in that first half with Chelsea, here comes Cucurella down the left, here comes Malo Gusto down the right, who are good players. But if you want to be creative and score tons of goals and win games, it's not going to be that.
And did you see how? And I think he's one of the best talented front men in English football, João Pedro. But either Chelsea won the ball back in those areas, right back in the full-back area, and he had nobody within 30 yards of him when they played it up to him, or I was watching from our commentary position, he was actually 15-20 yards inside the defensive half when Chelsea were defending. So when they won the ball,
there's no outlet.
There was absolutely nothing and nowhere to go.
Yep. Yeah.
You then have to travel 70 yards.
Yeah. It was for me. I thought in some ways it was. Chelsea played with that style in a manner of a team who are far below where they should be as a football club, because they were thinking in the match, like I've been guilty of this for the teams I've played for, they looked like they spent so much time getting ready for what City were going to do that they disregarded what they were going to do themselves in terms of how to attack.
Right.
So whenever they won the ball back, or say Sanchez had the ball, he's looking up, here's a high ball to João Pedro. João, wrestle 3 or 4 players if you can. Maybe he'll drop to one of ours and maybe we can do something. That's a side that's far better than that. So many good footballers being basically told, like, we're going to focus on just make Cole, make sure you come back. Make sure you back. This guy, make sure you come back.
Pack out the midfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's make it hard for them. Yeah. Yes, you can make it hard for them, but you also need to try and win the game at some point, and Chelsea don't have that.
And also, footballers these days, they're just way too nice.
Well, exactly. Look at everyone being nice to Naden.
Look at these two.
I know.
Just because I took my teeth out, I wasn't horrible. I was just horrible. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Because Semenyo, who was man of the match, scored a brilliant goal. I mean, what a skill set to have. Big, strong, fast and talented.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a good starting point.
And that's not me.
No, exactly.
What I'm saying is, by being horrible, is as soon as Cucurella was booked, and he'd had him on toast before he was booked, one-on-one. When Cucurella gets booked, I didn't get the mindset of not ramming that ball down Semenyo's
target him
every time. I'm in midfield, I'm getting the ball, going, there you go, full back, don't even overlap him. And you run at Cucurella because he cannot make a challenge. But for a long period of the game, they didn't do that. And that's why I'm saying, sometimes I think, does the modern day player even think about these things? Or does a manager have to say, hey, he's booked, give him the ball and let him run at him?
Are they too honest? Because that's what I would say. They're too honest. Whereas they're too nice, too honest. In our day, that's exactly what I would do. I'll target him. If he's on a yellow card, I'm going on the other side and playing on him. If the other centre halves on the yellow card, I'm going on that side. I'm targeting him. I'm stamping on his toes. I'm giving him little elbows in the ribs. I'm causing absolute carnage.
Yeah, but to be fair, what I will say is I've never actually played for a really good team, so I can't really say how the targeting will work.
Despite that,
but I'm glad you guys have said that.
You very much hang your hat on Manchester City.
It's the teams
and somehow still trying to get yourself in the celebrations as well. I think we've got some footage here of you with
footage.
I think this was Rodri, wasn't it? Just after the trophy presentation.
Listen.
There he is.
At the end of the day, you know what I mean? If a Ballon d'Or winner wants to come and say hello to me, then there's not much I can do. You know what I mean? Basically, I'm like Ballon d'Or just by, just being close to him. That's the way it goes, no?
It rubs off, huh?
Yeah, well,
I'm glad I wasn't here.
To be honest,
you're stood there, look.
To be honest, though, Craig, just to the.
I'm not shaking players' hands.
They're not shaking yours.
No, exactly.
I've
crossed that divide many years ago.
Yeah, to be fair, I've obviously been very, very fortunate to support City in these last few years whilst I've been working, and I've seen, like, say, Rodri after a Champions League final scored the winning goal. I've spoken to him then, and I think for Gahey as well. Last year, when Palace won it, I spoke to him and congratulated him. And I said, you probably don't know anything about blah, blah, blah. Then he started talking about our careers.
Right.
So I have a connection with him from there. Congratulate him again and said, basically, it's his trophy now.
All right,
that's 2
we
years
don't
in a
need
row.
the whole story.
Anyway, run the promo down, whatever. Run the promo.
When your expected goals is lower than 1 for both sides, that pretty much sums up this final overall.
Expected goals, expected schmoles, whatever you want to say.
Why was it so poor?
I think, in my opinion, Chelsea's approach was one which was basically built around a side who struggled to find wins and confidence in recent weeks. So they found something against Liverpool playing in that style. I think Colwell being back, Reece James being back in there as well, you saw a more robust side to them. But I think with most of the attacking coming from Gusto on one side and Cucurella on the other, their defenders, they might be able to contribute in attack sometimes, but they're defenders, so their attack wasn't really there. And I think from a City standpoint, at times, I think Marmoush and Haaland didn't work well together as a two. And as the game wore on, Roger was getting more tired. They were losing that influence in that midfield section. And it was boring. It was boring. That's essentially what it was.
Yeah.
Because every time Doku got the ball, for example, somebody who we want to see on the ball, it's a 2v1 against him. It's going to be very difficult for him to go past 2 players and so on. So Chelsea tried to make it for hard as City as they could. That's their first thing. And they did do that. So when that ends up being the case, you get a game like that.
Jermaine as a striker, talk us through the Semenyo goal.
Oh, what a finish! So he didn't have his best game today. And
No,
I think
not many players did, to be honest.
exactly, and I think that's something that we need to address. But at the same time, he was part of the build-up. The one thing he does really, really well, he doesn't set the ball off and watch and admire his pass and admire what's going on in front of him, the attacking play. He finds himself going into the danger areas, into the 18-yard box, closing into the 6-yard box, close to where the goalkeeper is. Lovely little ball across the pitch from Haaland. But that finish, the little back heel finish, is so difficult to do. 9 times out of 10 you will miss the target.
Right.
Every now and then you'll miss the ball completely. But to do it from that angle, oh my gosh, the goalkeeper has absolutely no chance of getting there because he doesn't expect it.
Yeah. I'm offended you didn't ask me about that finish.
Yes, I know. We go back to Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, sometime in 2010 or whatever. But I think in fairness from Chelsea, from this perspective, Colwell is on Semenyo.
Right.
So when Semenyo does that, there are certain times in football where you hold your hand up and say, well, there's not much I could have done there.
Yeah.
That's great forward play. That's a fantastic finish. And something where 9 times out of 10 that probably doesn't go in, but today it certainly did.
And of course, you kind of felt as this game was going on, it was going to take a big mistake or something special to separate these two sides.
Yeah, and I don't know if you'd agree, but defensively the teams weren't making that many mistakes. A lot of mistakes were happening in the attack.
Yeah.
So maybe it was going to be that quality. Would you agree?
100%. I don't feel like Chelsea put City under enough pressure for them to make a mistake in the first place. And on the flip side of it, I think the way City were playing, Chelsea had to just sit deep anyway, so they weren't, I mentioned before, they weren't making the penetrative passes through the midfield or through the defenders. They weren't getting the defenders facing their own goal. Everything was being played in front of them, and it was neat and tidy, don't get me wrong. It was pleasing on the eye, but as a striker, I want to see goals, I want to see opportunities, I want to see shots, I want to see saves. We didn't see enough of that today.
We saw the emotion in with Bernardo Silva when he caught himself on the big screen at the top. Obviously, this is last piece of silverware, in theory, that he'll lift for Manchester City. What will the history books say about him?
For Manchester City, he's an icon. I think they showed recently that through his tenure at City, he's not played in maybe 7 games total. That is it. So you can see how important he's been, and at times maybe he's playing as 6, maybe he's playing as an 8, maybe he's high and wide on the side. He's played left back as well. One thing for sure is that he's had to be played. He's probably Pep Guardiola's most trusted player throughout that whole time. So legacy-wise for him this year, being given the captain's armband as well, for him to walk up those steps twice, to be able to lift the trophy in that manner, and to know that these are the final days in what's been an incredible chapter for him, for Man City, for his legacy in the Premier League as well. So he's rightly emotional. Same for John Stones, who isn't necessarily getting a chance to play, like Bernardo Silva is. But as he walks away, people lift him onto their shoulders because he's been an icon for Manchester City.
I always feel someone like Bernardo Silva is someone who former players appreciate more than fans even, because you can see what he does maybe more than those who haven't played at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those players that he's the creative force before the creative force. Every time he gets the ball, he'll always give you 110% energy and effort. He's not the quickest player in the world, but he's so intelligent. The way he plays the game 2 steps ahead of everybody else, and that's why he stands out as much as he does.
Sure.
For me as a striker, I would have loved to have played with somebody like that, with Bernardo Silva, just because of the way that he makes space, not just for himself, but for everybody everybody around him. He's an incredible footballer, great human being, and genuinely, it's going to be a shame to see him leaving the Premier League.
For sure. What I would say, the same way with Bernardo Silva is the same way it was for David Silva. When they first came, I thought these small little left-footed players want to play like little rinky-dinky football, get into them, be physical, you'll dominate them. For all the years that those two played, they've never been dominated, and instead their influence has been phenomenal. You give them the ball and you trust them with the ball. Very rarely do they turn it over. All the time, they're dictating the tempo and the mood of a game of football. 100%. And for both of them, they've been through City's most consequential era in their history, at a time when the Premier League is changing styles and so on. Little Bernardo Silva, who is not very tall, it's not very fast, not very strong, is still without question one of the most important players for a team that's won so much.
Let's welcome in Craig Burley is with us. Craig, of course, we didn't hear your commentary. I'm sorry, it was full of sunshine and positivity, wasn't it, for this game?
Well, I was about as positive as I could in that first 45 minutes.
It was tough.
I think I bet that Leeds, when they came here against Chelsea, I think Chelsea will feel, particularly in that first half, they've left it on the table. And what do we talk about when we saw the lineups? What will happen when City push them back to a back five? Is that they'll dominate the middle of the park, they'll dominate possession, and that's how it panned out. So yeah, the City didn't have to be great. Chelsea were a bit better in the second half. I heard you boys talking just before I came down. City are not a juggernaut at the moment. They're a good side, and I just feel Chelsea were a little bit too.
We got Bernardo Silva. I'm not sure if we can get him just here. He's walking behind Craig. We were just talking about how he's going to be missed, Craig.
Oh, I thought you were going to get him in for an interview.
You're going to have to get him yourself, Craig. That's the thing.
I'll go.
You use your Burley charm.
Certainly better than Solskjaer. Oh yeah, I mean, I was just talking. You had David Silva, as you well know, who was an 8 out of 10 every week, sometimes a 9 or a 10, and you replace that at some point with the Portuguese version.
Exactly.
Who's that consistent player, and for someone so diminutive, he's not big, to have that physical presence and want that physical battle as well. It's absolutely brilliant.
We were saying before, like, he's a player that shouldn't be as good as he has been for this whole time. When I think about the way the Premier League is, a player that's maybe 5'8", 5'9", isn't the quickest, isn't the strongest, but for City across those years has been as important as anybody else within that side.
Well, he was going to leave a couple of years ago, wasn't he?
Every year has been rumoured,
and then he was talked out of it. But I think the time is right for him.
Yeah.
Going out in this sort of high.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so.
And there might even be a Premier League, isn't there?
You never know. And I think what's been key, for this year with him, this is the first year he's been captain and wearing the armband and taking on that responsibility with this new side, with new players. They see the game in a different way, but I think he's led by example.
And that's an example that you feel that teams like Chelsea, Jermaine, have been missing. Like people like Rodri, who we saw today, Bernardo Silva, people who can take this team, take this 11 by the scruff of the neck and lift them to the standards that Pep wants.
Yeah, absolutely. With Chelsea, that's why they spent over £200 million on two centre midfield players.
Yep.
They were hoping one of, if not both of those two midfield players, Enzo and Caicedo, were going to be something similar. You don't spend £100 million and not expect to get a phenomenal football player. It just, something behind the scenes at Chelsea is just not quite right.
Yep.
It took them a little bit of time. Maybe the price tag was a little bit too heavy on them. Maybe the expectations that come with it.
To be fair, I think where I'll sort of go slightly against it, I think Enzo and Caicedo have turned out to be players that they wanted to be.
They've grown into it.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there are other
but
players
initially, maybe it was a bit too much for them.
Yeah, I think for me anyway, which players are key for Chelsea. You mentioned those two. Like at his best, you mentioned Cole Palmer. You could talk about Levi Colwill or Reece James. Yeah. But I think for me, a lot of the supporting cast around it, at times they can't elevate themselves to that level to where they can be competitive.
If you have a midfield today of it was almost a little box at times. Sometimes they have to go a bit wider. But if you have Caicedo and you have Reece James and you have Fernandes and Cole Palmer, and then you secede possession and ask them to have to do a defensive job, that's going against the grain of what these guys are about, what brings the best out of them. Hey, Cole Palmer going back to help Malo Gusto for the bulk of the game isn't where he's going to hurt City. So I just feel Chelsea they've got no direction at the moment, never mind no leadership.
Thierry Henry has sent a strong message to Mikel Arteta ahead of Arsenal's massive Premier League clash against Manchester City, and he didn't hold back. The Arsenal legend warned that talk is cheap unless it's backed up on the pitch, especially with such a defining test coming up this weekend. While the Gunners secured their place in the Champions League semi-finals after goalless draw against Sporting CP at the Emirates, Henry made it clear that the performance simply wasn't good enough. Yes, Arsenal got the job done, thanks to their 1-0 win in Lisbon, but managing just one shot on target at home raised serious concerns. And against a team like Manchester City, Henry believes that level just won't cut it. Now, all eyes turn to the Etihad Stadium, where Arsenal face the league leaders in what could be a title-defining showdown. Arteta's side currently holds a 6-point advantage, but City still have a game in hand, and recently beat Arsenal 2-0 in the Carabao Cup final. The stakes couldn't be higher. "I want to see that fire at the Etihad," Henry said on CBS Sports. "It's easy to talk, but go there, against Manchester City, and show what you're made of." Henry made it clear that while he believes in Arteta and the direction of the team, belief alone isn't enough. "I believe in what I see, I believe in him, in that fire. But when you say things like that, you have to deliver. And I didn't see it tonight." Despite his criticism, Henry acknowledged the significance of reaching the Champions League semi-finals, something that doesn't come around often. "We're through, and I'm very happy. A semi-final, it's huge. I never won it, but I did win the league. Now go to Manchester City and win. That's what I want to see. I believe in Mikel, yes, but show it." When asked how Arsenal should approach the game, Henry was blunt. "Not like tonight. Not like against Bournemouth, or Brighton away, or what I've seen at times this season." And when questioned whether the performance against Sporting would be enough to beat City, Henry laughed. "The Manchester City I've seen recently? They've won 4 in a row, and even Liverpool were in the mix. It could have been more." Still, Henry remains hopeful. In fact, he's been consistent in his belief since the start of the season. "I truly believe we can win the league this year. This is our biggest opportunity to prove, as a team, that we are capable." But for him, it all comes down to action, not words. "I'm sitting here in the studio, there's nothing I can do. But I've heard fire. Now I want to see that fire at the Etihad." One moment that stood out to Henry was Declan Rice's reaction at full time. Look at his face. Go back and watch it. A lot of players were smiling, but his expression. "I don't know. Maybe I need to talk to him to understand what he was thinking." This is a guy who just reached a Champions League semi-final. Henry made it clear, there's no negativity in celebrating the achievement, but expectations must remain high. "This is huge, congratulations. It doesn't happen often in our history, so of course I'm happy. But against City, I want the team to win, not settle for a draw. That's it." Arsenal head into the clash with just one win in their last 5 matches across all competitions, including a 2-1 defeat to Bournemouth in their most recent Premier League outing, a reminder that improvement is urgently needed if they want to make a true statement against City. The pressure, therefore, is not just about one match, it's about momentum, identity, and belief at the most critical stage of the season. Inside the Arsenal camp, there is a clear understanding that performances must match ambition. Arteta, speaking after the draw with Sporting, admitted that his team has to improve a lot, particularly in the final third, where their lack of creativity and cutting edge was evident. While defensive discipline has been a strength, the inability to control games and create consistent chances is beginning to raise questions at exactly the wrong time. That concern is echoed by pundits and former players across England, many of whom agree with Henry's assessment. The general feeling is that Arsenal have shown resilience, but not the dominance expected of a team aiming to win both the Premier League and compete deep into the Champions League. Declan Rice, however, has taken a different stance. The midfielder has brushed off external criticism, insisting that the squad remains fully focused and unaffected by outside noise. Internally, there is still strong belief that this group has what it takes to deliver in decisive moments. Rice's mentality reflects a dressing room that is trying to stay grounded, even as scrutiny intensifies. The upcoming clash with Manchester City is now being framed as more than just a top-of-the-table encounter. It's a defining test of Arsenal's maturity. City, with their experience and relentless consistency, represent the benchmark. Pep Guardiola's side are known for stepping up in exactly these moments, and their recent run of form only reinforces the scale of the challenge. For Arsenal, the narrative is clear. Promise is no longer enough. After coming close in previous seasons, this is the point where they must prove they can handle pressure, respond to criticism, and deliver when it matters most. Supporters are divided. Some see this as the perfect opportunity to make a statement and silence doubters. Others share Henry's caution, worried that recent performances hint at vulnerabilities that City are more than capable of exploiting. What happens at the Etihad could shape the remainder of Arsenal's season. A strong performance, not just in result, but in attitude and intensity, would reinforce their title credentials and validate Arteta's project. A weak display, on the other hand, would only amplify doubts and hand momentum back to their closest rivals. In many ways, Henry's words have already done their job. They've sharpened the focus, raised the stakes, and set a clear expectation. Now, all that remains is for Arsenal to respond, not with words, but with a performance that proves they truly belong at the top.